Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And thank all of you for being here this afternoon. Let's see, this morning I was about 20 miles from the Mississippi River. And so 5 hours later, I'm here. And I know that Jim and Doug Boone have both told me this is God's country. I got to tell you, it smells sweet up here. The air smells sweet. You folks are always so accepting. And I'm a Eastern Iowa guy, but I'm chair of the entire Republican Party. And first, let me just put on my hat and talk to you all as a Eastern Iowan. And I just want you to know that we recognize what you do in terms of our state strategy. Somebody has to run up the totals. I've got Johnson County. I'm very proud of the University of Iowa. Not so proud about Johnson County, Iowa. I've got a whole lot of the most extreme down where I come from. And I'll tell you, whether we're talking about the upcoming race for governor or whether we're talking about Senator Ernst's races, it's been so incredibly important what Northwest Iowa has done. I mean, you can see it when you watch the results come in like I do, regardless of where we're at, whether it's legislative races, and you first start to see some of these counties come in, and we're behind. And I know in the last presidential race, hold on, we still got Northwest Iowa. Nope, hold on. No. And I remember I was talking to Ronald McDaniel, and I said, no, Northwest Iowa isn't in yet. Just mark my words, just wait. And sure enough, boom. I mean, it wasn't just an increase, it was a logarithmic increase. So it was absolutely terrific. And so I think it's important you know that the chair of your party, even though I'm 20 miles from the Mississippi River, I recognize what you've done, and I want to thank you for what you do every single time. I want to thank Jim and Marilyn Dean. This is just absolutely beautiful. This is the second time that we've had it here. I wished everybody could see what I'm seeing right now. It's just an intersection of the future and the present and the past, and the GOP enthusiasm is so high here. I was at our Lincoln dinner last week. I'm going to be in Ottumwa next week, and been traveling all over the state, and I'm here to tell you that the enthusiasm is very high. We all understand what 2022 and how important that is, and couldn't be more privileged, feel more privileged and honored to have Senator Cotton here with us today. Also, I want to call out, and seriously, Doug, thank you. Doug and Janet, you're a help to this Eastern Iowa guy and making my way through here, and you and the deans have just helped me navigate my way through here, and I truly feel part of the entire state. I got to tell Adri, I am a frequent, many people are frequent flyers like on airlines. I'm actually a Pizza Ranch frequent flyer. I don't have my car, but I'm just telling you, I have lost track. It's got to be over 100 Pizza Ranches I've been at in my 7 years, and I'm partially blaming you for this. So I just want you to know that. A few other thanks. Our Patriot level hosts, I want to make sure that I call out Jim and Marilyn Dean, Doug and Janet Boone, Mike and Margie Bennett, Dale and Karen Den Herder, Adrian Marla Groneweg and Pizza Ranch, and Drew and Jean Vogel. Thank you very much. I also want to thank all of you who have opened your wallets to us, and I don't take that lightly. I'm a conservative guy. The one thing that's that's been difficult for me, and that is to raise funds, because I don't like asking people for dollars, and I still, after 7 years, now I'll do it, as many of you are painfully aware, but ultimately I haven't lost that sense of responsibility when I do that. So thank you very, very much for that. I understand that I have the grandparents-in-law of our Lieutenant Governor Greg here. I got to bring them up just for such a fantastic Lieutenant Governor. Jack and Kay Borchers, where are you at? I got to call out the grandparents-in-law for our Lieutenant Governor. Where are you at, folks? There you are, right there. Thank you. The State Central Committee is the governing board that basically sets the broad micro or macro direction for our state party, And they're the ones that hire me, so if you like what you see, you can thank Kevin Brown. If you don't like what you see, it's Kevin Brown's fault. But every district, every congressional district has 4, and Kevin is here from the 4th district. He is one of your representatives on the State Central Committee. So Kevin, if you'd wait and be acknowledged, thank you. Besides Tom, Representative Jake Bossman is here. They are members of the legislature, and even though tonight we're going to emphasize a lot of federal issues, I want to make sure you know from my perch, and I was former leader in the Iowa House of Representatives and follow the legislator very closely. I don't think you'll find any place, any state in the country, any year in our history where our legislature has done exactly what they said they were going to do. I mean, and it takes some real courage. It truly does for them to follow through, because they are lambasted when they do. Honestly, some of the most, the cruelest and the negative comments I've ever seen in my 58 years have come in attacks of not only our legislators, but also our governor and our federal officials. And I say that not to be negative. I say that to further reinforce what I'm saying, and that is your legislators are doing their jobs. Your Northwest Iowa legislators, those that are here tonight, you too, and all of them, I just couldn't be more proud. And so on behalf of our 2 representatives that are here, but all of your terrific legislators that are there, I'd like for all of you to give them a round of applause for the terrific things they've done. We've got some county chairs here. Bob Henderson is the chair of Woodbury County. Where you at, Bob? There's Bob right there. And Susan Stewart, is Susan here tonight? There's Susan. Susan is the city chair of Woodbury County, so I would assume that means Sioux City. And Kevin Van Otterloo, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is with the Sioux County Republicans. Kevin, are you here? Where are you at? Is Kevin here? No? Well, I bet you if he's a Sioux County Republican, first of all, that makes him representing about 90% of your county. Coming from a county that borders Johnson County, it's almost hard for me to believe that a county would be 90% Republican, because believe me, down where I come from, we've got counties that aren't. So thanks to all of them. I did have 2 messages that some of our office holders want me to pass on. Governor Kim Reynolds wanted me to pass on her regards, and I said, well, 10-to-1 odds are that they love you in Sioux County and in all of Northwest Iowa. But she wanted me to send her regards. And on the way up, I talked to Randy Feenstra. Actually, he and his chief of staff were just about ready to do some media. And so I asked him if he had any comments or anything for his hometown, and he just said, you know, Randy, you won't find a more sincere human being than Randy Feenstra, that's for sure. And he said, just tell him I'm proud of him, and thank you for everything they've done. Randy is doing a terrific job. I talked to federal House leadership 2 days ago, and they brought up our 3 congressional delegates, and specifically Randy Feenstra. So just what a wonderful person. I don't even get my question out, whether it's first in the nation or something to do with the party, and Randy says yes. I mean, that's just he's just absolutely over the top helpful to the party in almost anything we're trying to do. So you need to know that, especially with your hometown boy here. You need to know just the quality. I know you know the quality of the individual. Maybe hear it from an Eastern Iowa guy, the quality of the individual that we have. Let's see. A couple other things I wanted to mention as we're going through. I want to make sure I cover everything because you came to hear these 3 terrific individuals and our very, very, very special surprise we may have for you later on. First in the nation, we're doing everything we can. I just want you to know that. And I hope we don't have to go it alone, but we will go it alone if we have to. There's nothing more important in my job description than that. So you need to know that. You need to hear me say that. I want to say something about the election bill that those 2 gentlemen pushed through, because there's a lot of comments from people. Unfortunately, even from some Republicans sometimes. And I'm a county supervisor. That's another thing that I do on my day job. And I want to make sure all of you know that the work that they did on that election bill And unfortunately, it kind of pains me to say this, but the organization as a county supervisor that I'm a part of is called the Iowa Association of Counties. It's called ISAC. Folks, they're very left-leaning, and they have not done fairly to a lot of the great work that you two have done. And I just want you to know from the perspective of a local official, I've been elected 3 times to the Board of Supervisors, and I just want you to know that election changes that have been made, they were made in reaction to 3 rogue auditors, one from Woodbury County, that deliberately and overtly and with malice and arrogance broke the law. That is never mentioned by any of the local officials that are criticizing our election law. You need to know that it is safer to vote. It is safer to vote by mail now. It's more accountable. It's more transparent. And I just want to say this time, I'll take off my hat as chair of the party, but as a local official, you two and what all of your colleagues did was exactly what we needed in this state for fairness, and don't let anybody tell you it wasn't. So I want to make sure that all of you know the great election changes that we made have increased the integrity of our vote immensely. So, my first introduction. I think, Senator Cotton, you and I met in 2016. It was at one of our dinners, and of course at those dinners it's really, really hard sometimes to meet and to visit, but I do know one thing about you, and I found it out that night, and I've also been following you on Fox News and following your career. This is a man that walks the talk, and this is a man that has actually put his life on the line. This is a man that has not afraid to state if something is coming, and that takes a lot of risk. When you're in the crosshairs of the media sometimes, and you make some of the predictions that you made, Senator Cotton, that's some political courage. It must be unfortunately satisfying, and I say that because your predictions I wish were not true, but they were, and if we would have only heeded your warning, and I know you're going to talk about that a little later on. So, you know, Northwest Iowa, whenever I think of Northwest Iowa, I think of just the quiet integrity and solidity of you folks here. Seriously, I'm saying, and I'm not running for anything, so you have to trust me, it's coming from my heart. You match this, and you stated specifically when you would like to come to Western Iowa. I mean, that was you folks, that was your request to our staff. That's why we are here, and I think I know why now. Because your integrity and your solidity and your honesty matches these individuals that are here right now. So with no further ado, Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for the kind introduction. Thank you all for the warm welcome. Thanks for being here. Marilyn and Jim, thank you so much for opening your beautiful museum to us. I also want to add my thanks to Northwest Iowa. Thank you for being the bedrock, the heart and soul of your Republican Party, because without you, all those victories that we've seen in Iowa over the years would not be possible. So thank you so much. Thank you especially for sending to the United States Senate in Washington, D.C., 2 of my very favorite people, your fine senators, Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst. And I have to say, thanks for sending a great lineup of representatives as well. Between Randy, your hometown congressman, and Ashley Henson, a great representative, and even after Nancy Pelosi tried to steal it, Marinette Miller Meeks. I've got to say, you probably got the best lineup of freshman representatives of any state in the union. And those 5 members of Congress represent you so well. And it is so important that next year you send all 5 of them back to Washington. And I mean every single one of them. Right, Chuck? Every single one of them going back to Washington next year. You know, sometimes I know that you get politicians from out of your state who come through Iowa, and they may pander to you a little bit. I want to promise you I'm not going to do that tonight. I have too much respect for you. I'm just going to say, I'm the only one who loves you so much that I married a girl born in Iowa. Now, Anna, if she were here, she would say that you can't say that I'm from Iowa. She's from a small town across the river in Nebraska, but they didn't have a hospital, so her parents had to bring her across the river to be born in the Sioux City Hospital. And as you heard, Anna is my beautiful wife. We got two wonderful boys, Gabriel and Daniel. Joni and Joni's son or daughter, Libby, knows them pretty well. They're our go-to babysitters whenever they're in Washington, which is another reason I have to say I'm so thankful that you sent Joni Ernst back to Washington, D.C., because if you hadn't, that would have meant Chuck Grassley had to be our babysitter. But as it is, we have our babysitter back. I'm sorry that Anna couldn't be here. She'd love to be here with you. She's obviously got her hands full as our babysitter. Joni can tell you she has her hands full with our 6-year-old and our 4-year-old. But you know, those boys, sometimes they give you old wisdom in a new light. Just the other night, Gabriel at bedtime said to me that he wanted to read God's Big Plans, which is Rick Warren's illustrated children's book of Bible stories. And I said, okay, son, what do you want to read? And he said, I want to read David and Goliath. I'm like, okay, why do you want to read David and Goliath? And he said, because David is a little guy like me, and he threw a stone at the giant's head and killed him. I said, that's pretty good, son. I said, and Daddy, do you know who the bad guys are in David and Goliath? And I said, who are they, son? And he said, the Philippines. And I said, close, son, but the Philippines are an island nation off the coast of Asia. I think you mean the Philistines. He said, oh yeah. And then he said, and he's read it 150 times, so he should know the lesson of it. Do you know why David was able to defeat Goliath? And I said, tell me, son. And he said, because he believed in God, so he had courage to do the right thing. From the mouths of babes, right? Well, it reminds me of a lesson I learned from my drill sergeant in basic training. Drill Sergeant Norton, he used to always say to all of us, privates, you have to do the hard right over the easy wrong. That's what we're going to teach you here in basic training. If you forget everything else, remember you got to do the hard right over the easy wrong. The easy thing will sometimes be comfortable, it'll be convenient, it'll be safe, but you have to do the right thing specifically because it may be uncomfortable, it may be inconvenient, it may be dangerous, but it's still the right thing. And those words made a big impression with me. I carried them with me in the Army, but I've carried them with me throughout my life since then, carried them with me to Washington, D.C. as well. Sometimes you do have to do the hard thing because it's the right thing. Sometimes in these day and age, the right thing is simply telling the truth in the face of a hostile media. As Jeff said, early last year, I was ringing the alarm about the coronavirus. And I said at that time, you know, maybe we should look into this lab in Wuhan as a possible origin of that virus. And what did the media say? Oh, that's a debunked lie, it's a conspiracy theory, it's xenophobia, it's racism. I don't know about you, it seemed like common sense to me. I bet a lot of you didn't listen to the media and thought, maybe we should look into that lab, right? Well, where are we now? A year later. We were right and they were wrong, and China has been lying all along. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, to lower the boom on China for their decades of lying and cheating and stealing and, yes, unleashing a plague on the world. I know that here in Iowa, just like in Arkansas, that China has been up to no good for a very long time. And no matter what the media says, we all know and can all use our common sense about exactly what happened 18 months ago in Wuhan. I mean, after all, it's a city larger than the size of New York. They have a lab right down the street that investigates coronaviruses. The woman in charge of that lab's nickname is literally the Bat Lady. This is not complicated. Yet, in Washington, you hear howls of outrage if you point out these things. Sometimes, the hard thing in Washington is simply standing up to the onslaught of Joe Biden's Democratic Party that have so many threats to our way of life, it's not even clear where to focus at the time. Just consider what's happening in the streets of our cities all across America. We're seeing a crime wave of unprecedented proportion. Why are we seeing that crime wave? It's because the Democrats, for years, have been letting criminals out of jail, refusing to send them to jail in the first place, and now are attacking our police and threatening to defund them. Just last summer, we reached the peak of it whenever you had rioting and looting and arson in the streets of our cities. Vandals tearing down statues, including statues of people like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, U.S. Grant. My friends, when you're tearing down statues of Washington and Lincoln and Grant, it's not because you're mad about injustice, it's because you hate America. Now, the rioting may have subsided, but the crime is still rising. And this is a real and growing threat every single day. Just this morning, I was flying through the airport in Chicago. I was speaking to an officer there. He's had 28 years on the force. Before that, 4 years in the Army. He said as soon as he gets in his 30, he's done. He's going to retire. And most tragically, I asked him about his son, because law enforcement, like the military, is often a family affair. And I said, yeah, my son did go into police work. For 5 years, he was an officer here. And he came to me and he said, Dad, I don't want to let you down. I just don't think I can do it anymore. And he had to say to him, son, I don't blame you. I don't think I would either if I were you. So he turned in his badge. Think about that. Young man followed his father's footsteps into police work to keep his fellow citizens safe. And he turned in his badge, and his dad said he was making the right choice. That's the result of Joe Biden and the Democrats' radical law enforcement policies. They're defunding the police, whether they're taking money away from them directly or driving so many of the men and women of law enforcement into early retirement. That's what the Democrats do. But I know that we Republicans here in Iowa and across the country will always back the blue. And we've got chaos in our streets. We obviously have chaos on the border as well. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris inherited the most secure border in modern times. Yet what did they do? Did they finish the barrier wall? Did they keep in place the highly effective policies that secure the border? No, they declared that it was open borders. That's what they campaigned on, after all. And now, Joe Biden's going to solve the problem by appointing Kamala Harris to be his border czar. She finally went to the border last week, basically just a pit stop at the El Paso airport. A lot of Republicans were on her case that she needed to go. I kind of have a little bit different perspective. I was worried that she might find a way to make it worse if she went. But it's still pretty bad. And before that, she was wandering around Latin America trying to find the so-called root causes of this border crisis. I could have saved her the time. I could have saved her the energy. The root causes live in the White House, and his name is Joe Biden. And even here in farm country, in Iowa and Arkansas, the threats to our way of life seem to multiply every day. Many of you are probably very worried about Joe Biden's radical tax proposals to create a new and even worse kind of death tax, eliminating what we call the stepped-up basis, and treating death, a moment of tragedy and loss for a family, as a reason to tax that family. This proposal would be even worse than the estate tax, and at a time when a family is trying to overcome loss, it would send the tax man to their door, causing them to sell the family farm or the family business just to pay off Joe Biden's runaway spending in Washington. You probably also heard of the so-called 30 by 30 plan. Democrats in Washington want to take over 30% of our federal lands by 2030. 30%, almost a third of our country in the hands of unelected bureaucrats in Washington. Where do you think that land's going to come from? You think it's going to come from beach homes in California and New York? I don't think so. It's going to come from farm country. It's going to come from your farms. It's going to come from my family farms in Arkansas, because the Democrats want more and more control over the way you live your life every single day. But don't worry, Joe Biden says he has a plan for farm country. He's got a big plan. New program to help forgive farmers' debts. Passed it a couple months ago in their big multi-trillion-dollar blowout. Set aside billions of dollars to pay off farmers' loans, with one small condition. It depended on the color of your skin. I think we all know exactly what to call that kind of program. An official government policy of racial discrimination that has no place in America because it is deeply un-American. Now, it's not surprising that the Democrats would propose such a plan. After all, they've been fanning the flames of racial division across the country for the last year, pushing in our military and in schools, even down to kindergarten and first grade, what they call critical race theory. The idea that America is deeply and irredeemably flawed, that it's built not on freedom but on racism, indoctrinating our kids with it. I think this may be the most dangerous threat of all. It may not manifest itself immediately, but if we win elections next year, if we put the brakes on the Biden agenda, if we win in 2024, that's all for the better. If we, however, let the left indoctrinate an entire generation of our kids to hate America, what will we have gained? I know all of you from my conversations tonight are deeply worried about the future of the country. Sometimes you may be worried to speak out your own mind, worried about what it means for your job or whether you're banned from social media. But I promise you, in my travels across the country, I can assure you there are tens of millions of people out there who think exactly like us. And you find it in some unexpected quarters. You know, a few months ago, we had another crazy Joe Biden nominee come in front of the Judiciary Committee. She testified that all Americans are racist. So I asked her, well, who are you racist against if all Americans are racist? And you know, she was tongue-tied and hem-hawed because she was caught up in her own nonsense. A few days later, I was walking down the hall of the Senate to vote, or the Capitol to the Senate floor to vote. I passed a Capitol police officer who I've known for 6 years, African-American. We have a friendly relationship and talk about sports, about weather, about kids. We've never talked politics. I said hello, he said hello, and a couple moments later, he called down after me and said, Senator Cotton. I turned around and said, yes. And he said, I just want to say you were great at the Judiciary Committee the other day. I was like, wow, I didn't realize you sat around watching Judiciary Committee hearings all the time. And said, I didn't watch it, but I heard about it and I went back to watch it. My son is a junior in college. And ever since he stepped foot on campus, they have been filling his mind with these lies. I didn't raise him to believe that. I raised him to be proud of who he is and proud of this country and to recognize that it doesn't owe us anything. We owe it everything because this is a great country. And he said, and it helps, since he hears this every day on campus, that a U.S. senator said the exact same thing that his old man has been preaching for the last 20 years. So like I said, there are tens of millions of people out there that feel exactly like you do about this country and about its future, who are willing to stand up and do the hard right, who are willing to make a difference for our country. And I'll just leave you with one last story from my time in the Army that I think is appropriate at this moment. I used to get asked, I still do actually, why is the flag on the soldier's uniform flown in reverse? And it is on the right shoulder. I said, the answer is simple. It goes back to the days of cavalry charges. As the soldiers rode forward and the flag flew, if you were on the right side of the formation, you'd see the flag flowing in reverse, just as it appears on our soldiers' uniforms. It's a reminder to this day, long past the days of cavalry charges, that our Army never retreats. It always advances. And I think that's a pretty good lesson for us all to take forward. At a time when conservatives are under attack and America is under assault, we will never back down. We will never surrender. We will never retreat. We will always stand up and do what is right by this great nation. Thank you all. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
Thank you very much, Senator Cotton. Much appreciated and obviously very sincere and heartfelt. We have two other United States senators here that we would like to join you. And what can I say about Chuck Grassley that hasn't been said before? And I just got to thinking, well, I can just say the same thing that's been said before. He says, I haven't read all the people on Twitter. That's for, believe me, up in Northwest Iowa, I couldn't repeat that, or I'd be tossed probably across the Missouri River. But I just want to say this, Senator Grassley, whether it's what you did on the Judiciary Committee, whether it's what you're doing in terms of a watchdog, or whether it's just you being Iowa for us in Washington, D.C., the sense of pride that you give us, not in you, although we are very proud of you, but the sense of pride that you give us in our country and in ourselves and our way of life, it can't be topped. And there's really not a lot of words that I can use except for thank you. And yes. And Senator Ernst, there's a reason why you ran up the totals in Northwest Iowa, and there's a reason why you pulled away from your competition. And it's really simple. It's because you're real. You have not forgotten where you came from. You are still that small town girl. You are still that farmer's daughter. You are still Iowa. I mean, we have two of the greatest senators. I truly believe this, with the exception of maybe Arkansas. I had to say that, he's a guest. But we truly do have two of the greatest senators, and both of them, I don't think you two could be arrogant even if you tried. I hope you're never going to quit your day jobs and go into acting, because you can't do that very well either. You are what you are, and what you are is ours, and what is ours is two of the greatest senators in this country. Come on up and join us, both of you. I'm going to stand to the side, so I'm not going to join you. Yep, we're going to move the podium. After 7 years on this job, I finally have people. But guess what? I'm paying them out of my own pocket, so. So have a seat, you three. You need microphones? I'm going to stand on this side. Unless you start dozing off, then I'm going to go right next to the speaker. My staff down there told me something that nobody has ever said to me before, and that is I need to speak up. So I'm going to do that. Can you hear me back there now? Okay. And make sure you do hold it as close as you can so we can hear us all the way back to the back. So we're going to start with a few easy questions. And my wish is, and it would just make people want to vote for you even more, if they knew what you are, what really makes you tick. I mean, we see the presence of you, we hear about you, but I mean, these are just fine human beings. So I will start with Senator Grassley, but can you reflect back? This has nothing to do with policy or anything. Reflect back on somebody that has impacted you, say before the age of 18, before your high school graduation, somebody in your life that's impacted you that you still think about, if not every day, at least every week.
My mother, My mother spent a lot of time with me studying history and government. So I think she's the one responsible for me being interested in government.
I would have to say my mother as well. Just the lessons that we learned on the farm. Obviously, she grew up in a different era, very tough times. But she was very thrifty. Maybe not quite Chuck Grassley thrifty, but she was very thrifty, and she taught us what it was to save, to reuse absolutely everything, even bread bags, if you need to have them on your feet, to keep your feet dry. But she was just really that role model. And my folks taught me hard work, don't complain, get up, do your job, and you'll reap the rewards.
And I would probably add my folks as well. In particular, my dad. We spent a lot of hours from about age 4 or 5 on the farm, getting cattle up, learning a lot of lessons. Lessons the hard way, I have to say, learning on the farm with Lynn Cotton. But they stuck with me and probably set me up for success in life, and probably in retrospect helped direct me towards the Army. My dad was in Vietnam, and helicopters would occasionally fly over, and he'd say it reminded him of being out in the jungle, or we'd be in the wood line fixing a fence row that was down, and it'd be raining, and say this is just like it was in Vietnam during the rainy season. I think it's probably to his chagrin. Let's just say that they weren't happy when I left my law practice to join the Army. At one point, my father said he felt like God was punishing him for what he had done to his father in 1969. But it all worked out very well, and in fact, probably made us closer than we've ever been before.
Senator Grassley, 50 years of wisdom in public service. What still gives you hope, even amidst the Biden administration, even amidst this nonsense? Give us a little hope. What gives you some hope out there for this nation?
The Constitution of the United States, as long as people have confidence in it, within that Constitution, the principle of limited government means that government can only do what the Constitution says government can do. Everything else is left to the people, and as long as it stays that way, and every individual in America can decide in their own way what they want to do to advance themselves, the use of their labor or the use of the power of their brain to accomplish whatever they want to accomplish. The collection of every individual American has what made our country the biggest economically, the strongest, and the hope for the world. And as long as we continue that process, I've got hope for the future of the country. And if you think that today is a crisis, it doesn't compare to what we had in the previous 240 years. A lot of other problems, but I expect America to be a great country for another 240 years.
Senator Ernst, absolutely. Senator Ernst, you've felt the same ups that the individuals in this room have felt. You've felt the same downs. You're us. We're you. What gives you hope? And I'm going to move to this side.
Yeah,
standing in your way.
It's along the similar lines of Senator Grassley, but I would say it really is the people of the United States of America that keep me very centered and hopeful for tomorrow. A lot of folks get so discouraged, they reach out and they're like, oh my God, the world is falling apart with the Biden administration, or this politician, that politician, and I just have to remind them that our country is not made of one person or another. It is made up of Americans, and you will determine the fate and the future of this country. And so there are days we all get very, very discouraged. My daughter Libby is going into her final year at the United States Military Academy. And so in another year, she will be serving in the United States Army. And whenever I am discouraged, I'm around Libby, I'm around her other friends, and it just reminds me that we have great hope for the future. These young men and women, they are tremendous patriots. they will go on to serve and protect our country. And so when I'm discouraged, I just have to think about them. And they really do believe in the greatness and the goodness of our country. And then I'm further reminded why I need to be grateful for this country. But it's the people of the United States that make our country so wonderful. They will continue to make our country wonderful.
Senator Cotton, you've seen things that those of us in this room are never going to have to see. And because of the service of people like you and Senator Ernst, we are more protected, and we're not going to have that for the rest of our lives in our minds. As a veteran and as a person that's been there, give us some hope today.
Well, I would add my voice to what Chuck and Joni said, especially what Joni said about the people we meet in our line of work. That's one of the best things about representing Arkansas in the United States Senate, about traveling to states like Iowa to be with Chuck and Joni and all of you. Get to meet so many people that we would never otherwise meet, not from our walk of life, not from our part of the country, not from our part of the state. Like tonight, all of you willing to give up your time, willing to give up a little bit of your money to support the efforts of the Republican Party, help elect good, quality officials from your local city councils all the way to the United States Senate. The heart of the American people is still strong and still pure. I see it all the time in going to the grocery store in Arkansas and getting stopped by people who want to share something with me, or like Joni said, hearing from a young aspiring soldier who's having trouble navigating the Army bureaucracy but is not giving up because she wants to serve her country in uniform. It is so uplifting and so rewarding. One of the very best parts of our job to see what those people we serve feel for our country and are willing to sacrifice for the country. It is a lot better than being in Washington, D.C., I'll tell you that much.
Yes.
I'm told I'm getting feedback over. I'm used to being up on the stage, so sorry about this. I'm trying to find my sweet spot and not block your view. Senator Grassley, real simple question. Can you tell us something that keeps you up at night as a U.S. Senator? What's something that worries you?
Well, the immediate thing, and I don't think it's going to happen, but if two Democrats would change their mind and we did away with the 60-vote requirement in the United States Senate, there wouldn't be any opportunity to have bipartisanship that the institution of the Senate with that rule forces now. So if you want more bipartisanship, the only place you're going to get it is in the United States Senate under those rules. Beyond that, it would be the debt that we leave our kids with, not just with the $6 trillion, but with the money under every administration since we paid down $568 billion on the national debt between 96 and 2000. We've just been going downhill very fast, and that debt is going to be left to our children, grandchildren. That bothers me. And it bothers me when the attitude in Washington has come, well, you don't have to worry about the debt with low interest rates. Well, these interest rates aren't going to be that way forever. And they were 12.5% inflation in 1974 when I was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, and I run on a platform of the inflation fighter. I don't want to ever go back through that again, and we've had 10 to 15 years of reasonable inflation, and that's where we ought to be now. But the Fed isn't worried about it, and they can do a lot about it. And then our spending habits in Washington are just like throwing gasoline on the fires, leaving a big burden for our grandchildren.
Senator Ernst, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, all of the same things that Senator Grassley just outlined, but just something that's recent in the news that has weighed heavy on my mind certainly is the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And believe me, folks, we do need to wind down the war in Afghanistan, but unfortunately what we see is a very rapid withdrawal, and I am extremely worried about violent extremist organizations that still are in Afghanistan. This is what led to 9/11. And President Ghani, president of Afghanistan, visited Washington, D.C. last week. And I had the wonderful opportunity to sit down with him at the Capitol with a number of his national security advisors. And one of the advisors, and I thought it was really telling, he said, you keep saying, you meaning America, keep saying, we don't want Afghanistan to ever be a safe harbor for terrorists again. And he said, what do you mean ever again? He said, we still are a safe harbor for terrorists. So we haven't eliminated the problem, and yet we won't have the same level of visibility over our enemies. So that really worries me. We have to figure out a solution. I know we don't want soldiers on the ground there. I understand that. But I worry about what's happening right now with the Taliban as they're wiping out swaths of Afghan people. They will murder the women and children there that have been educated. It is a violent, violent group. And they are the ones that created and caused the actions on 9/11/2001. So we need to prepare ourselves and just understand that the threat is not eliminated, and we're going to have to find other ways to take care of that threat now. That does keep me up at night right now.
Senator Cotton.
My kids keep me up at night.
Let me stop you right there, because Mrs. Tom Cotton sent me a video of your children. They're playing Go Fish, so I'm sure they'll go to bed on time for Anna.
They will go to bed on time for her. She's the tough one in the family. No, I mean that literally they keep me up at night. My 4-year-old has now discovered how to use pillows and cushions and books to build a staircase up to where the child lock on his door is. So he gets down every morning at 5 a.m., turn on cartoons on the TV in the living room. But more than that, I mean, they do go to bed before I do, and I go in and check on them at night. And I worry about all the things that Chuck and Joni have cited for the context of my own boys, just like I know you do for your sons and daughters. Is America still going to be the strongest and most prosperous economy in the world, or is China going to eclipse us? Will they have the same kind of opportunities to chart their path in life that I did and that Chuck talked about? Will they be able to get a start in life, or will inflation be too rampant? Will they be able to start a family and buy a home? Will they be safe from crime on the streets, safe from threats abroad? I think we all have those concerns, but they can be a little abstract until you have children of your own. But when you go in and you check on those little bundles of joy, sleeping peacefully, which is about the only peaceful thing they do during a 24-hour cycle, it kind of brings it home and makes it a lot more concrete and makes me redouble my commitment to what I've tried to do in Washington.
Thank you, Senator. I had a couple questions just for you. And by the way, you need to know, they don't know what I'm going to ask. We have not discussed these questions at all. So you just need to make sure this truly is spontaneous. But I have to, I know you're a guest, I don't like to put you on the spot, but one of the things that unites all of us in here, and I would say all Republicans and the majority of Democrats in this state, and that is our first in the nation status. So I was just kind of wondering what Senator Cotton thought about our carve-out system, and specifically about leading off in 2024 with Iowa's first in the nation.
Why should there be any change to the Republicans' first in the nation status just because the Democrats can't run a caucus? Look, I think I support your first in the nation caucus status. Iowa has had this status now going back decades, and that develops more than just a custom or a habit. It develops a tradition, really, of civic engagement, unlike you see almost anywhere else in the country. Every 4 years, certain states move their primaries up to late February or Super Tuesday to try to get in the game from their normal May, June, July, August dates, and it's just not the same because they're not used to having candidates for president come through their state. They're not used to doing town halls. They're not used to going to the pizza ranches. It's just different in Iowa because you've been doing it for so long and doing it so well for so long. So I think Iowa's been doing a really good job as the first in the nation caucus state, and I see no reason to change just because the Democrats had some failures last year.
I appreciate that. I'm going to tell you what I told Tim Scott. If I were on the stage right now, I'd probably hug you for that answer. Just telling you that. I'm not, so don't worry. Second thing, sometimes, we know we've got diamonds in the form of Ernst and Grassley. We know that. Could you give us a little insight? Sometimes we need somebody from Arkansas to let us know exactly what it means for us and what it means for the country to have them in the United States Senate. Could you shed a little light on that?
Well, Chuck's probably one of the hardest working senators in the United States Senate, and he's been doing it for a very long time. And he won't let anything get him down either. For years, decades, I guess, he had never even missed a vote until he unfortunately contracted the coronavirus last fall. And I know that you, like me, were worried about Chuck and his health. I sent him a text message as soon as I heard the news, and I said, "How are you doing?" And he said, "I'm fine. I ran 2 miles this morning." So I texted him back and I said, "Only 2?" And he responded, "I'm 87. And Joni and I, we've been through the fire together. We met in 2013 on the campaign trail when we were both just brand new Senate candidates. And obviously we were part of the big class of 2014 that helped win back the Senate. And I'll just say I like the Senate under old management a lot better than I like it under new management. But she's been a great partner and ally on the Armed Services Committee to keep our military strong and keep the country safe. She's been a great friend to my wife Anna and me, and Auntie Joni has been a great surrogate auntie to our 2 little sons. As you see, obviously, she's getting to see them play Go Fish and probably fighting when it's over who won. But it's a real treasure to have them both in the United States Senate and to consider them both my friends.
Thank you, Senator. 2 more questions, and we'll start with Senator Grassley. And I want to bring up something that I know occupies a lot of your time and thoughts, and that is China. I've had people tell me that they believe China is an existential threat. I've had no one tell me, except for a few Biden folks, that China is no threat. Can you assess, what are your thoughts right now about China, their threat, what we need to do, anywhere you want to go with this question?
One thing to think about China, they don't think about overtaking the United States next week or next month. They're looking ahead 5 or 10 years to do it. They have a different thought process than we do. We want everything to happen yesterday. They're doing it very deliberately, but in several areas for at least 15 years, they've been a threat, stealing our intellectual property, our trademarks, playing with their currency so that they'd have a better trade environment, and all these things that violate, in some respects, even their own laws, but our laws and the rules of international trade. They'll steal anything that they can get their hands on, and most of it is so that they can reverse engineer it and make it themselves, and they've been very successful at it. Sad commentary is during the 1980s into the early 90s, we actually thought that we had a responsibility to help them get ahead, or help them. And we did it for a strategic reason, to wean them away from Russia. Now we look back and they were smarter than we were. They weren't getting out of Russia what they wanted to get out of Russia, so they made peace with the United States, and we gave them what Russia wouldn't give them. And so we're in this situation with with China a little bit because we haven't been as smart as they have been. And so I think economically they're already a threat and gaining fast. Militarily, they're spending a lot more, increasing their domestic budgets than we are. And And so this president coming forth with only a 1 6/10 increase in defense expenditure, percent increase in defense expenditure, compared to 15% increase in most domestic programs, we're actually losing money in this year's budget. So vis-a-vis China, we're weakening ourselves. They've got 300 ships, 350 ships. We've got little under 200, and we're going to have, no, we got just a little under 300, and we're going to have fewer if we don't get on top of it. So we got to wake up to their threat, and all I can say is we got to spend more on defense. We've got to, when we draw lines in the sand, we got to know that there's consequences for that, and there's several threats that we got to draw lines in. The sad commentary is that we're the world as a whole is not willing to take on China, and that's a sad commentary. Now, maybe this president is making a little bit of progress in regard to that on trade, but I don't think he's going to get Europe to say that they're arresting concentration camps that they have for the Uyghurs there, the Muslims of their country. It's just a tragedy. So I'm not giving you much answer to your questions of what we should do, except just make sure that we're diligent. One of the bad things is corporate America is helping China. Just look at what Apple recently does and what Google does over there. I suppose Amazon does too. Give them almost anything they want. That's a tragedy that we'd have our own corporate interests overriding the national interest of the United States government. So I'm talking more around it than I am directly to the point. You say I'm an expert on China. Yeah, that's the guy that's an expert on China, not me.
Senator Ernst?
Okay. So, yes, we have this interesting relationship with China on that trade front. But I think that we need to tighten down in those areas, and we can see some benefit there. But what we see overall from China is their desire to have world dominance militarily and economically. With their Belt and Road Initiative, you see them expanding around the world. And the easiest example I can give you is they will go to third world nations or economically challenged countries and in port areas, and they will say, we will build you a port. We will build you a port with a very low interest loan. Well, fully knowing that that country will never, ever be able to repay that loan. So then they come back in after payments haven't been made, and they take over the port. They can use those ports for military expansion. We see this all around the globe. We see the Chinese occupying areas in South America. So it's not just in the Eastern Hemisphere that they are doing this. They are now in our neighborhood, in our own backyard. And our Southcom commander, Admiral Fowler, has been warning us about this for years, that the Chinese are now starting to take over in countries that we would consider friendly to us. So they are gaining a foothold, and we really do have to push back on that. So we're being challenged economically, we're being challenged militarily by the Chinese, and they're quite methodical, they're deliberate, and it's a very thoughtful move forward. So we've really got to get in gear and find a way to push back. Starting militarily is the easy part.
Senator Cotton, you're one of the leading experts in the Senate.
So, as Chuck said, and as Joni says, I mentioned in my remarks, China has been stealing and cheating and lying against America for decades. And Chuck touched on a lot of that. We made a lot of mistakes in the 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s that resulted in the loss of millions of American jobs and factories going to China, loss of wealth for so many Americans. I would just add that we have to get back to why that has happened. Why does China behave in this fashion? What are the sources and the roots of their conduct? And to me, it's very simple. It is a communist dictatorship. Never forget that China is run by a Marxist, Leninist, communist dictatorship. They did not adopt capitalism. They did not modernize. You can just read it in what their leaders say. They still believe in communism. And what those of us old enough to remember Soviet Russia once thought about Russia, what we think about communist Cuba today is exactly what you should think about China's rulers. Just look, for instance, at what they've done to Hong Kong over the last year. Hong Kong has been long one of the most vibrant cities in the world. They agreed for 50 years that Hong Kong would be autonomous from mainland China and continue its customs and traditions of democratic autonomy. And not even halfway through that agreement, they sent troops into China last year and they cracked down, and now they basically ended those traditions of freedom in Hong Kong. Why did they do that? A lot of their leaders got sanctioned. It's cost them billions of dollars in economic wealth. They did it because Hong Kong is a democracy of Chinese citizens on Chinese soil, and they will not tolerate that in the world. Just like they cannot tolerate the fact that Taiwan is a democracy of Chinese citizens on Chinese soil. It is the most direct affront to their control over their own people, and as long as China remains a communist dictatorship, they are going to continue to act in that fashion.
Thank you for those sobering words. Last question. The last thing that we're going to do. So Senator Grassley, or Senator Ernst, we'll start with you. Is Chuck Grassley, he talks about these runs into the Capitol. Yeah. And when Chuck Grassley is running into the Capitol, you've mentioned Chuck Grassley running the Capitol. So I'm actually going to ask Chuck Grassley himself, how in the world do you get the stamina to run into the Capitol? If I tried doing what you do, I would have to have EMTs follow me. How in the world do you get this done? Are you really, how do you keep in shape?
You're talking about something that I do just once a year on my birthday. I run 6 days a week now. I used to do 3 miles 4 times a week. I decided to slow down to 2 miles 6 times a week. But you're talking about the one time a year that I run from my home to the Dome. That's my home in Northern Virginia, a townhouse, not a home. And it's kind of like a jail if you want to know the truth. So that's 6 2/10 miles. So I do that just to do something special on my birthday.
Have you and Senator Cotton, have you ever, this is a pretty young guy, he's fit,
Well,
Army Ranger?
He's got we used to have, and I assume next year we will have, we used to have this Capital Challenge. And he's got the record for running you broke Baucus's record, didn't you? You ran the 3 miles in 15 minutes, right?
Boy, that sounds faster than I could run. Maybe I didn't beat Baucus's record, but I think I outran most of the senators that year.
And even now, if you were doing it, right? Yeah. Listen, if he was running with me, I'd have to stop because the dust would be so much that I couldn't see where I was going. See.
Can he keep up with you like when he does like push-ups and set-ups and stuff like that?
Well, I told him about a conversation I had with Senator Cotton a couple weeks ago when he's going to be in Sioux City. Well, if you're going to be in Sioux City, we got to do what we did in Davenport. Now, this is that was in 2016 when he was campaigning for me in 2016. So we got a tragedy among our veterans, and that happens to be something 22 on an average, 22 veterans commit suicide every day. So for me, this campaign still goes on. It was a big thing 5 years ago. But you do 22 push-ups for every one of the veterans that died that day. So he and I are going to do 22 push-ups.
Now? You want to do that now?
And
We are?
well, you told me you would do it.
I said only if you would let me win, though.
Well, I'm 87, so you got to give me a little leeway.
I think actually what he said is that he'd have to do one less than I because he's so old, if he tied me, it would be like beating me. So thank you for taking it easy on me.
Yeah, okay. You're going to count.
I will count. I'll count.
Okay.
I will count.
Now, I don't think this would be ideal to do them up here, but can you go down there to do them?
If you're doing 22 push-ups, you can do them on top of the roof, as far as I'm concerned.
All right.
Now that I'm 44, he's no longer twice my age.
You'll hit my head.
That means I got to go a lot lower down. Okay.
All right. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22! Outstanding!
Thank you, Senator Cotton.
Thank God I only had to count.
Thank you, Chuck Grassley, for once again taking it easy on me.
And for that Des Moines Register poll, there you go.
Outstanding.
We'll just, let's just end, if you have a quick word to your group, and we'll call it quit. Just the last thought you have for this wonderful crowd up here in Northwest Iowa. Senator Grassley?
None of you are going to give up on America. Don't give up on America. And thanks for your support for every one of us up here when you can tell I shouldn't have done that. Thank you for the help of every one of us up here. Thank you very much.
Yeah. God bless you, Chuck Grassley. I just want to thank all of you once again for your wonderful support last year during a very tough election cycle. And I think it's because of Northwest Iowa. We won pretty handily, right? So God bless you. Thank you. And I do want to say as well, because I truly believe on the darkest of days when we're feeling discouraged, I all want you to know and understand, and I know you know this, but I'm going to remind you that we live in the greatest nation on the face of this planet. That will never, ever change. God has his hands on us. I know that. So God bless you all. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Thank you as well to Senator Grassley and to Senator Tom Cotton. Thank you for your wonderful friendship. To Jim and Marilyn and all of you, thank you so much for making this a wonderful evening. Thanks so much.
And I just want to thank you all very much for your warm welcome today. Thanks to Jim and Marilyn for hosting us again. Jeff, thanks for putting together another great event for your party. To Chuck and Joni for being great colleagues. And I just want to remind you how important the work you do is. I know it's the middle of the summer and an off year. I know that elections can sometimes seem far away, and maybe the work you do in your precinct or your town or your county doesn't fit into the big picture, but it really does. The big picture is right here on stage. If you did not reelect Joni Ernst last year, if you did not reelect Chuck Grassley in 2016, the Democrats would have total control in Washington. There would be no brakes on their radical agenda. So I just want you to think about that when you're out knocking on doors in the hot summer months, or you're making phone calls, or you're missing out on something else that you could be doing. Maybe you're skipping a meal to pitch in a few more bucks to a candidate or to the party. What a difference you make here in Western Iowa as the bedrock of the Republican Party of Iowa, and what a difference it makes for our country. Thank you all very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. A couple of things. We have a police officer in back that had volunteered to be here, and I'd like to give him a round of applause. Also, there's been, Chris normally puts these things on in my office. She couldn't be with us. I'd also like to give a round of applause to all of the volunteers. There's a lot of people here that make this thing happen. I'm just fortunate enough, our family's fortunate enough to have a building to do these type of things. But I'd like to give a hand for all the volunteers, whether they're with our team or the Republican Party, that has made this possible. Thank you again, Senators, for coming and give us your words of wisdom. One last thing. Chris made arrangements that on the bottom of one of the chairs at every table is a Republican elephant. And if you happen to be seated in that chair, we ask you to take the centerpiece of your table home with you as a remembrance of this evening. If you don't want the centerpiece, find somebody in your table that wants it. But if you would now, look under your chair and see if you're a winner. And again, thank you, Senators.